This meeting is to review progress in defueling, closure, and implementation of drinking water requirements, the administrative consent authority. Thank you all for taking time to participate in this meeting. It's great to have you here. It's important for us to start this meeting in a good way, and I appreciate that Mai has offered to lead us in the Oli and share a short story. Mai, thank you. All right, everyone, if we can all stand, please. I believe we're going to have words on the screen. We're going to do the first 4 lines, and Oli is a way to center ourselves and to remind us of our sense of space. So, mahalo if you could join in. Ola ikaha. And places. Can you hear? We need mics. They can't. Very clear. Is there a microphone? Can you? Project. Is it possible to chat?
Sorry, I text like an old man. Thanks, Scott. It's young and vibrant.
Person online is asking for us to enable chat on Zoom, and that the Wi-Fi is spotty, that they can only hear us every other word. Oh, okay, we got one side of this. Our Wi-Fi.
Try to get DLA. We'll get there.
Just this. Minus.
And you're
probably be the best mode if you needed to do some communication.
Could we change that for future meetings so that it's more interactive? A webinar is not very interactive. It's more of like a static thing where the people in the room are speaking to the audience and the audience doesn't really get to engage.
Okay, we'll take down a note and we'll talk about it. Were you able to switch? Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you. Back to you, Mike. Real fast, sense of place is very important in Hawaii. I just wanted to share a little mo'olelo with you about the area that we're in. We are in the Moku or district of Ewa in the Ahupua'a of Halawa. Halawa extends all the way up to the mountains. And then there's a little stream and a big stream, the Kamananui stream and the Kamana'ihi stream. And that feeds into Halawa Stream, which we all know what is happening currently. A little story I want to share. My favorite book, Sites of Oahu, which also has maps if you want to look at like old Hawaiian names of the places we're in. The meaning of Ewa. When our two gods, Kane and Kanaloa, were surveying the islands, they came to Oahu and reached Red Hill and saw below them the broad plains of what is now Ewa. To mark the boundaries of land, they would throw a stone, and wherever that stone fell would be the boundary line. When they saw the beautiful land laying below them, it was their thought to include as much flat, level land as possible. They hurled the stone as far as the Waianae Range, far, super far that way, and it landed somewhere in the Waimanalo section. When they went to find it, they could not locate the spot where it fell. Therefore, Ewa strayed became the name of this moku, the stone that strayed. And I leave you with that mo'olelo and hope that we continue these discussions so you can learn more about these important places that we call home. Mahalo. Thank you so much, Mai. Appreciate you sharing with us. We'll now invite introductions from the folks that are seated at the table. I'd like to ask if we could start with the CRI. Marty, could we begin with you?
Hi, my name is Marty Townsend. I'm an at-large member for the Community Representation Initiative, and I'm here to be nice to the Navy.
Hello, my kako. My name is Mai Hall. I am an affected family member at the Native Hawaiians.
Aloha, I'm Melody Aduha, and I represent an organization which is the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party.
Aloha, my name is Lisa. I am at large seat representing the community of Oahu.
Aloha, Ilima DeCosta. I'm at-large member of the CRI. Mahalo to everyone for being here. Mahalo.
Ana aloha kako. My name is Kainoa. Currently filling in as an alternate for Heleni, who couldn't join us. I know it's Merry Monarch time, so it's going to be hard for a lot of people to engage, but happy to be here. Yeah.
Aloha, I'm Michelle Poplar. I am at large community member of Oahu, affected community resident.
Hello, my name is Bill South, the CRI rep, and I'm representing the Sierra Club. And
My name is Tara Sutton, and I am here to represent the families. I live on the victims joint base for joint base for owner victim, maybe water like their sexually due impacting families. Speaking Farrell, recognize I am substitute for Airbnb for impacted families, as you know, I've been impacted. And they will be. So I see so with the Department of Health and Environment.
Aloha, my name is Kathy Ho. I'm with the Department of Health.
Hi, good evening. I'm Captain Kevin McCormick. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Navy Closure Task Force.
Aloha, good afternoon. I'm Commander Ben Dunn. I'm the Environment and Remediation Lead for Navy Closure Task Force.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I am Rear Admiral Mark Williams. I'm the Deputy Commander for the Navy Closure Task Force.
Good afternoon, Sherry, Executive Director of Task Force. Great, and I'm Amy Miller. I'm the Director of the Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division at EPA Region 9. And Do we have somebody from DLA online? Do you know?
Like Dave.
They were having issues. I think we were working it. Did they actually enter the Zoom?
Do you see Dave Kless on? David Kless
Okay.
and Kleiner. Okay, and Kleiner.
Admiral, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey. Good evening, Dave. Thanks for joining. I know it's late there.
Oh, that's okay, thanks.
That's it? Okay, and I'm Laura Everett. I'm the Director of the Environmental Justice, Community Engagement and Environmental Review Division at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Region 9. I'm here tonight to serve as a facilitator. Thank you for having me. At our last meeting, on the advice of Ilima's mom, who I was really honored to get to spend some time with, we did a values exercise for the folks that were participating in that meeting. We've asked the folks that are just now joining us who didn't participate before to share their values ahead of this meeting, and on the advice of the CRI to try and make the best use of time. I'm just going to give a quick report out on what were some of the values we shared previously and what are the new values that we've heard. So from the participants of our December meeting, we heard a lot of values around how we show up, including with integrity, compassion, perseverance, honesty, being good stewards of our various professions, and additional contributions to that category from new participants here tonight include being committed, being deliberate, and being engaged. At our previous meeting, participants also talked about how we relate to each other, including sharing reflections, speaking truth, offering solutions, making sure that folks are included who are impacted, respecting others' viewpoints, valuing CRI members, and honoring transparency and mutual respect. New contributions in this category, including deeply valuing relationships and valuing communication. We also heard from folks about views that we hold. Some of the contributions included Hawaiian independence, hope for new water sources, hope in general, and local control over our destiny, as well as the statement, water is life. New contributions in that category include an increased sense of safety and the valuing of science. So thank you to our new participants just joining us for engaging with us in a values exercise. I appreciate you doing so and the opportunity to share. I'm asked to provide a couple of quick notes about housekeeping. Restrooms and a water fountain are located just behind us, but folks ask if you could use those doors and enter through the second set of doors to reach them, as opposed to pass through this set of doors during the meeting itself. There are some snacks at the back. We're going to take a break around 6:15 to enjoy a little break together. And other than that, I think we're ready to go after a quick agenda review. We have 3 substantive topics for discussion. First, the topic is Red Hill Shaft and Navy Halava Shaft, and there's going to be lots of room for discussion across this table. We'll hear from Navy, we'll hear from the Department of Health, and then we'll engage with CRI members on that topic. On the second topic, it is going to be about tank cleaning and future use. We'll be hearing from Navy and then hearing reflections and observations from CRI members. Thirdly, we'll hear updates from the Navy responding to 3 CRI requests, and then an opportunity for discussion with CRI members about that response provided. And then finally, according to the revised administrative consent order, the final 30 minutes of this meeting are going to be reserved for public comment. So members of the public who are here tonight, if you'd like to speak, we're going to ask that you indicate your interest in speaking before the end of the break so that we can take the time to catalog those questions and queue people up for the public comment session. If you're here in the room, Alejandro Diaz has speaker comment cards. If you're online, I understand they'll share a slide that demonstrates how to request the opportunity to speak. Each speaker will be afforded 2 minutes to speak and want to make sure that you have the opportunity to plan your remarks. And we're looking forward to starting public comment not later than 7:30 p.m. We're going to go ahead and get started unless there's any other housekeeping that we missed. First topic is presentation and discussion regarding Red Hill Shaft and Navy Halava Shaft. Admiral Williams, over to you.
Thank you. First of all, good to be here. Good to see everybody again. Thanks for the opportunity to come update you all on our progress that we're making with regards to decommissioning the Red Hill boat fuel storage facility and the environmental remediation that's ongoing. I won't do introductions against my team. We will be ham and egging it and handing off at various points for speaking. So with that said, next slide. So before I hand off to Commander Dunn, who's going to talk about this, I want to be bottom line up front, right? So it is our intention to reactivate both the Red Hill and the Navy IA shafts. That reactivation will occur in conjunction with an approved plan by the Department of Health and with their oversight. Commander Dunn's going to talk through that. In addition to that, he's also going to talk about the long-term planned facility that the draft EA is out on, and hopefully you've had a chance to review that and comment on it. Which is often, you'll hear us maybe make the mistake of referring to it in its MILCON terms or military construction terms of P716. So if we refer to it as P716, that's what we're talking about, is the long-term Red Hill treatment, water treatment facility. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Commander Dunn.
All right. Hello again. If you roll forward each slide or one slide, there we go. So for context, the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam public water system or drinking water system is supported by 3 drinking water production wells, 2 of which are inactive and 1 which is active. So the 3 wells are the Waiava well, the Navy IA Halava shaft, and the Red Hill shaft. Since the end of 2021, only the Waiava shaft of those 3 have been providing water to the Joint Base system. But the other 2 have been inactive since that time. They are inactive today, and they'll remain inactive until we gain approval from the Department of Health in order to proceed with connecting them back into the system to supply drinking water. This project schedule that we have laid out in front of you is a plan for a water treatment facility that the Navy is pursuing that was identified in the 2022 Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring Plan. It entails the construction of a permanent water treatment facility to ultimately recover the well. A draft environmental assessment has been generated and shared with the public for comments. That review period just concluded last week. The Navy's about to receive those comments and then begin reviewing them to help further inform its environmental assessment. Also in an additional planning effort, there is a pilot study that the Navy is performing for its granular activated carbon system, which is the method of treatment for the proposed water treatment system for Red Hill Shaft. And so we will be conducting a pilot study to basically demonstrate the effectiveness of that technology to treat for constituents at Red Hill Shaft. All of the efforts tied to planning for the reactivation of Red Hill Shaft is closely coordinated with the Department of Health. Again, they have to approve our work plans. They have to approve the system that we're going to, or that we plan to install at the facility. And in the meantime, the Navy has begun the installation of a temporary or interim water treatment system to be able to provide a capability to use the Red Hill Shaft as an alternate drinking water source should there be an issue with the Waiava shaft. That system is not in place. It's not going to be in place for some time, but we are pursuing that effort. And then, as I mentioned, we are in the very early stages of reactivation for Red Hill Shaft. We're more than a year out from achieving that because there is no treatment system in sight, but we are continuing to closely coordinate with Department of Health for that effort. Next slide. I'm going to switch over to the topic of the Navy IA Halava Shaft, which the Navy is closer to reactivating than the Red Hill Shaft. Depicted in the graphic are the 3 wells that I mentioned. These are the Navy's production wells, not local or Board of Water Supply wells, so just to make the distinction there. It's important for the Navy to have multiple sources of water for system resiliency, redundancy purposes. There's a lot of activities on the installation that require water production, not just the nearly 100,000 users or consumers of the water along the system, but there's the shipyard and industrial processes, firefighting and emergency services, community services, gyms, dining facilities, et cetera, that are on the installation supporting the military and its operations here. at the Joint Base. Also here is a timeline for the Navy's effort to reactivate Navy IAEA Halaba Shaft, which began back in 2022. The Navy intended to reactivate the well. It first submitted a request to DOH in the summer of 2022. And since that time, we've been continuing planning and working through some of the requirements that the DOH has identified to reactivate the well. So in last fall, we submitted a reactivation plan to DOH. Again, requesting permission to proceed with reactivating. The DOH gave us conditional approval to continue with some of those preparations, but not approval to reactivate the well as a drinking water source. There's still actions that need to be taken to do that. And so one of those actions is a pilot study to demonstrate the treatment effectiveness of that system that the Navy has installed on site at the Navy IAEA Halaba Shaft. And so we are working through that process now. When we get the results from that study, we'll be providing that in a report to DOH for their review and approval and concurrence. And there's some other coordination that needs to happen before we can finally request full reactivation of that well. Along that way, starting with last month's open house, the Navy began to communicate its intent to reactivate the well. Talking about today, we talked about it a bit at the FTAC. We'll be talking it about next week. We have a webinar for the Navy IAEA Halaba Shaft reactivation. We have an open house next month that we will be covering it again. We continue to have it in some of our public messages that known as the recent Red Hill highlights, string of messages that the Closure Task Force has been putting out. And so we'll continue to provide updates as we move through that process. At that point, I'd like to turn it over to the Department of Health if there's any comments or remarks on reactivation.
Yeah, just for, I don't have any specific comments as far as what was said, but I will, when the time comes, I can talk about our oversight. So
I think we just
don't
don't
know at
get
that point.
some. Looks unmuted.
Your day a while ago.
Oh, we can move on. Okay. While we're waiting, can we ask a question of the Department of Health? Is that what, would that be okay with you?
It depends. If I can answer it, sure. If I can't, we will have to.
Okay, well, actually, I think it's pretty easy. I'm just wondering, how many water suppliers are there on the island of Oahu? In the state, okay. Okay, is there some way that we might be able to get that information? Is there some place that we can get it publicly available and also know like how much they're supplying? Okay. Will be the Oahu. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And you said there's over 100? In the state, but on Oahu. When we check it.
Dennis is on.
Sorry, come on.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, actually, I'm having a hard time hearing the room at this point. Can you hear me now? Okay, because okay, are we at the point where you folks want us to talk about our oversight at this point? Okay, because I'm sorry, I don't know about the other panelists, but I can't hear the room. But
Dennis, we can hear you online. You're
Okay.
fine. There's something wrong with the room.
Okay. All right, so I'll just talk about our oversight. I really didn't have much to comment with regards to the Navy's information that they presented.
Let's try and just make sure that we're syncing with the room.
Okay.
You guys still can't hear us in the room. We're communicating with our folks. You can hear us. Okay, then go ahead, Dennis.
Okay. So just want to make this distinction that the drug-based Pearl Harbor system and AMR is considered DoD critical infrastructure. So the Department of Health defers to the Navy for release of information regarding their treatment system and reactivation plan. I'm pleased to see that the Navy in their presentation has provided information for the public so that they can have a better understanding of what is being done at those sources. With regards to reactivation of existing sources, it is a common practice. An existing source may need to be temporarily out of service due to, but not limited to, maintenance, designation as an inactive source, or as a result of an emergency. Guidance for reactivation is provided for reactivation is provided for testing based on potential changes that would motivate the need for discovery. However, the reactivation of both Navy Halava Shaft and Red Hill Shaft is associated with new treatment added to the subject sources. When there's a new treatment, that triggers another rule. Under our statute, HAR 11-2030, new or significant modifications such as water treatment warrants a review and approval of the modification conducted by the Department of Health in the state of Hawaii under the before mentioned rule. In the case of Navy Halava Shaft, the trigger or need for treatment is because of a detection of PFAS compounds, which was expressed in their CCR back, I believe, in 2021. The levels were considered low at the time, but under the new rule, they do exceed the new PFAS MCLs. As a result, there is a need for treatment at Navy Halava Shaft, which the Navy is committed to and is proposing as a condition for reactivation. In the case of Red Hill Shaft, that's more of a preventative measure. I do not believe that we've seen levels of any PFAS or in some cases presently, based on the capture zone discharges, levels of petroleum that you know would exceed any MCLs, but you know that the need for treatment is there for preventative and for monitoring purposes, and you know we are currently reviewing that prior to approval of any reactivation of that source. Outside of that, I don't have any other further comments to make. Thank you.
For folks on Zoom, they're working to resolve the issue in the room. They're aware.
Thank you.
Okay, we can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, so we can look later and find out what those, because my thought is, I think that the individual water suppliers need to also handle more of the other. So everybody in the community, every water supplier. So, the agenda.
Will it build to cost each system and operate to the building?
Excuse me, sorry. We just got word that the online, people cannot hear.
We're good now. It just started working. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Are you folks prepared to answer those questions this evening?
Right.
Okay.
So for the Navy IAEA Halava shaft, well, actually both shaft treatment systems we're planning to use granular activated carbon treatment system, which is pretty common. That will treat for PFAS, that will treat for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. It will also treat for petroleum hydrocarbons and other constituents. So it addresses concerns about constituents of concern for that drinking water well. As far as source, that is difficult to attribute what the source of any of those compounds are. We have not seen any evidence from Red Hill as far as through our groundwater monitoring program, our continued capture zone at the Red Hill shaft and our modeling efforts that would indicate that the Navy IAEA lava shaft would be compromised from material from Red Hill. So it's difficult to attribute a source. There are other activities in the environment near all of our drinking water wells. As far as cost, I cannot speak to the cost for the treatment system. We are planning to reactivate the Navy IAEA Halava shaft at the end of June, but that's not our decision. That's totally dependent on completing the actions that have been laid out for us. So it would be not sooner than then. But again, that's a close coordination with Department of Health. We have to formally request that, and then they have to approve it. So it would not be before then.
Would the CRI be able to do a site visit to see how the treatment system is, how it works, and a show and tell?
I think that's a good topic for another meeting. Next meeting.
I see Tara, and then we go to Bill after that.
In the event that the wells are open in June, what is the plan going forward with, it's allowable, what's actionable? What allowed to drink before action is taken, I guess.
So let me, just to clarify, so the Navy Island shaft is ahead of the Red Hill shaft reactivation. So that's the one we're talking about with regards to reactivation in June. Red Hill is over the horizon. And I'll let Ben talk about the ongoing monitoring that will occur around that. So that
So we'll need to continue doing Safe Drinking Water Act compliance monitoring, which we do for across the distribution system as to other public water purveyors, but also it will be dependent upon the results of this treatment study and what DOH determines we may need to do as far as post reactivation monitoring. Anything above and beyond what Safe Drinking Water Act monitoring would entail.
If I may. TPH. Is TPH still going to be about certain goals? Just the various goals that are already, no, there's no safe. Are those levels being changed at all upon reactivation or?
Well, Dennis, are they, I don't know if they're still gonna be testing for it. Dennis, would you answer that? Be able to answer that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, testing for what specifically? I think I couldn't hear that.
What is the plan going forward after the well is reopened as far as contaminants that are allowable in the water system before action is taken?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning.
I just want to make a side note that in the future, if we were to continue meeting at Olelo, this is like all super ironed out and easy breezy and makes no wrinkles to fix. I don't want to disrespect, but it would be better if we just stuck with a facility that would have better. So my question is, following the reopening of the shafts and wells, what is the plan going forward for that are allowed in the water that we're allowed to drink before action is taken?
I mean, once the shaft is activated, it's meeting the drinking water standards. There's going to be a monitoring period, continued monitoring for PFAS. I'm not sure what more you want them or you're suggesting that they should be doing outside of the compliance. I'd like to point out that PFAS is not an occurrence. There are detections throughout the island, especially in the Waipapa area, and they already have treatment there. So the Navy will be expected to do the same thing that the Board of Water Supply is doing. We're treating all the systems the same, and all systems will be complying with the drinking water standards. But I also want to point out that the Navy system, and I'm not sure if this detail was pointed out, that it does also have, it has GAC and it also has ion exchange. So there's a redundancy in the system as well.
Yes, Commander Duff. We met at the open house, we see you again.
Sir.
I have a couple of questions with regard to ability to quantify defense. Is that, are you able to do that? And are we able to get those numbers on the various other items we're welcome to consider with that information? That's question number one. And the second question I had was with both these, there was mention of in the EAB, but sort of looks like it's more like an impact statement. Could you explain all this?
Why don't we first, let's address the second question first, Sherry, to talk about the EIS-EA conversation first.
Sure, hi, I'm Sherry. So by federal law, as a federal agency, we have to assess the potential environmental impacts of any proposed action we do, right? Sure, and determine the level of documentation that's needed. And so the decision maker which is the Navy on this one, determined that the appropriate level of the document was in mid. As we receive comments, as we look at it, if at any time during the process, we determine there's going to be a significant impact, then we will switch to an EIS. But for right now, based on what's gone out on the draft, we don't see significant impact. So that's why it's on an EA.
Or,
Good.
yep, for the PFAS, so the treatment system should be able to demonstrate that it removes PFAS from many PFAS in the influent source. That data will be available when we get the monitoring pilot results all finished. That will be available as well. There should be continued monitoring at the treatment system. I mean, for proper operation, it's pretty typical. Yes, sir.
Got Melody, Elima, and then Lacey.
Thank you, Laura. My question, I guess, was going to Sherry. Again, following up on what was mentioning the difference between EA and an EIS. And for Commander Dunn, the deadline was on Easter, April 20th, for our comment for the EA. So the question is, how did you come up, or the Navy come up with an EA versus an EIS for Red Hill Shaft? And why is not the Navy IA Palapa Shaft, none of which there has been found that there was need for an EA or an EIS. In other words, there was what is characterized as KTEX or categorical exclusion. Can you explain how one shaft would require an EA at the minimum and another shaft requires nothing at all, in which there's no public comment as to opening a shaft that has been closed since a November 2021 discharge of 1,000 gallons of shaft. So that's our concern. Of course, the Board of Water Supply is not looking into opening any of its shafts, which was closed at about the same time. So what kind of changes will happen with that plume? Because it's still there, to my understanding, without any potential monitoring, well, to see which way it's traveling, that it won't enter into the Board of Water Supply system as well.
Sure. So let me make sure I'm capturing all the questions. So let's talk NEPA first.
Okay.
And then Commander Dunn can talk about the robust network that we have on monitoring wells, to how we'll monitor the plumes. So for both wells, NEPA was performed. So a CAT-X, there are 3 levels of NEPA. There's the categorical exclusion, the environmental impact statement, and the middle one is an environmental assessment. So for the Navy IA Halava shaft, that is the temporary placement of GACs, granular activated carbon. That's what was analyzed as the proposed action. And through the Navy process of looking at the levels of impacts and analyzing them, it rose to the level of a CAT-X. So that is a NEPA decision document, and that was signed and it's out. So we did perform NEPA on that well.
Is that NEPA form available online for public inspection?
So I'll have to ask Commander Dunn.
We don't have it up yet, but it will be up for review. We have a new webpage on the Safe Waters site that we launched about 2 weeks ago. And that it's called the Well Recovery Water Resiliency tab under the drinking water side. It has information about the reactivation of Navy IA Halava shaft. It will have additional information about the Red Hill shaft as we progress through that process. It has sample results from all 3 wells. And so that information will be uploaded there.
And the form will be there as well. Because that's what has all the checklists as to what would determine
Correct.
whether there's FONSI or not. So I think I'm using the right acronym, right? Finding of no significant impact.
A FONSI is for an EA.
Yeah.
A categorical exclusion, as that is the decision.
Okay, then the problem is that Navy, you folks are doing this determination without any public input. So it's almost sounds self-interested and a potential conflict if the public is not allowed to contribute by way of an EA or an EIS. I mean, we've got effects on endangered species or critical habitats. We've got impacts on cultural or historic properties. We've got violations of environmental laws or regulations and public health or safety concerns, all of which the public has no input. If you decidedly say, well, categorical exclusion and K-text is applicable, which is what you're doing with NOS. So we're just wondering about that. I believe, or I could speak for the Environmental Caucus anyway, that we believe that an EIS for Red Hill is more appropriate, as well as an EIS for NOS.
So the Navy, thank you. The Navy is following the NEPA process, the regulated process. The Navy IAEA Halava Shaft is a former drinking water well. That property is meant for drinking water production. The provision of a water treatment system at that drinking water well fits that exclusion to resume utilizing that drinking water well. We felt there is additional analysis needed for Red Hill Shaft, given the impacts and the amount of concern in the history at that location, which is not the same as what has happened at Navy IAEA Halava Shaft, which the Navy secured as a matter of caution after the Red Hill November release 2021.
Okay, somehow I look at K-text as an exclusion applicable to very minor things, administrative things, and maybe repairs, but nothing here that appears to be applicable to a gap treatment. That sounds like a total different work plan that needs to be done, and I understand that you are doing a pilot project, which is good, but I think as the general public, we would like to have had an opportunity to comment. Since we did not, I know the Environmental Caucus, we did comment on the IAEA Halava in the Red Hill EA comment document, because I had no other way of making our comments known to you as the purveyor. So it appears to me that a purveyor should not be the one doing the determination of K-text because it's a conflict. But anyway, I want to move on to you indicated the GAC and you indicated ion exchange. Are these capable of filtering, cleaning out PFAS? Because that is a forever chemical that we are most concerned about. And then with the PFAS, has testing been done on both shafts and the location where the facility or the plant is going to be located? And will continued soil testing be done? And I believe the question was asked, how often the monitoring will be, and when will the public be aware of the results? Because that's kind of our problem, is that we don't get the results until months later. Like I just said, I had a question about the K-text form, and it's not even online at all. So, you know,
Let me address your
yeah,
first point. So I'd like to, certainly. Like to reiterate the Navy IAEA Halava parcel there is an established drinking water well. So placing a treatment system, a temporary treatment system there to recover that well and put it back into service. The Navy made a determination that it is fitting for the land use that is there. That's why the CADEX was applied. As far as sampling and monitoring PFAS, so I believe the first question, will the GAC and ion exchange technology remove that? Yes, the answer is it will remove PFAS from any PFAS in the water will be removed through that treatment train, that treatment system. Is other sampling going on, sampling and monitoring. There's an extensive amount of sampling and monitoring going on at Red Hill. Soil vapor monitoring. There is monitoring of the Red Hill shaft. There is a lot of information I am going to cover a little bit later in the agenda, our site assessment process, and some of the environmental activities that are going on for Red Hill. So,
Okay, then final question, regarding the filters, the spent filters. Considered hazmat material, I believe, where will that be disposed of?
I'm not certain if that actually qualifies as hazmat, but it will be properly disposed of as it's classified. Not classified as in classified information, but as it's determined as what kind of material it is, it will be properly disposed accordingly. I believe some GAC media is qualified as non-hazardous, so if so, then it will be disposed of in a normal fashion that commercial and other users of GAC media have and dispose of. I can't speak to the details of that now, but yes, if it is hazmat, then we would absolutely handle that accordingly, or has waste rather.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Okay, the amount of water, the amount of gallons of water that's gonna be extracted, I guess we can start with the since it's the first one that's gonna go through the process. How much carbon is necessary for the filtration system, given the amount of millions of gallons that you will be extracting per day?
So I can't speak to the volume or the weight of GAC media that is in the system. I can get the specifications of what those vessels are. There are 4 treatment trains that run in parallel. We use 3 of them. One's an alternative standby for backup and maintenance purposes. Yeah, I don't know that figure off the top of my head as far as what is required.
About generalization, if you had 1 million gallons extracted, how much gas carbon do you need to filter 1 million gallons of water? No?
Well, I know that we would use 3 of the trains that are there in the system at one time as we supply water through. And we would probably depend on the design, but I think it's typical that we would exchange or replace that media every 6 months if that is used daily. So these are fairly large tanks. They're industrial in size. So it's a good amount, thousands of pounds, but I don't know what the figure is.
Thank you. So we've got Lima, Lacey, Marty, and then Kainoa. Who might be first?
Thank you so much for those answers. My question is, you indicated that you're proposing a pilot treatment program using the gas, is that correct?
Yes.
Where has the Navy used this before and what has been the results of the use? Like what facility, what naval base, where has this been applied? Where has this kind of pilot project of using the gas to clean the water, where has it been applied by the Navy? And what are the results? That's the first question. I have a second question.
Okay, good. Go on.
Oh, the second question, I actually need the Board of Water Supply to step in and meet with.
So with regards to the use of GACs, it's common practice, right? BWS uses them. They can speak to how many they have them all over the island. We're obviously currently we're using GACs at Red Hill, right, to maintain the capture zone and treat the water. So it is a common practice for water purveyors throughout the United States to use GAC systems to treat the water.
I get that, but apparently this is a pilot project that you're proposing. So my understanding is something that's a pilot project is something that's not been done before. So it sounds like you're proposing something that's not been done before.
We're not proposing anything that's not been done before. The Department of Health has asked us to do a pilot study to demonstrate the efficacy of our design.
Okay, so where has the Navy actually done this? Like what specific base? What base and what are the results? Just so that the audience and the public can do our own research and follow up and be able to see for ourselves if GAC is as effective with the Navy's application.
We're using commercial GAC vessels or leasing them. So it's an industry standard. I can't speak to what other installations use them across the United States. But sorry, well,
For the
You're
Navy,
there.
where did the
So
Navy,
we're using GACs at Red Hill right now.
but where else? Red Hill is still an ongoing problem.
So-
Where else in
yeah.
the United States has the Navy used? the
That is
same-
outside the purview of our mission. We don't know that.
You don't know that?
I do not know where else in the United States that they're being used on basis.
Because we were not able to see the results in another area.
So that's again, Department of Health has asked us to do a pilot study to demonstrate the efficacy of our design. That's one of the pilot study is to demonstrate the efficacy of the design.
If it's something that's such common industry practice, if this is something that the Navy does across the board, then I guess I'm curious, why would it be need to have a pilot study? Why can't we just get information about previous uses and other applications in other areas, like, for example, Lejeune or other places like that, like.
I would
Well,
ask
that's
Department of
Marine
Health
Corps,
to
but-
comment on why they want us to do the pilot study.
And may I make a clarification? So when I say it's a common treatment technology, it's not just the military or the Navy that uses this, as indicated, BWS may use across the island. We don't have any other GAC treatment systems for drinking water on the island that the Navy uses. And the monitoring pilot is an extra step before we use the treatment system in use for supply to demonstrate that the vessels perform to the manufacturer's specification. So it's not unique to the Navy, it's a commercial product, and we're just demonstrating that it can do what it says it can do.
But we don't have any results from another location where this has been tried and used before in terms of the Navy. The Navy, and not this particular command, but just the Navy in general. We don't have that information. We
We're
can't,
not aware of
there's
it.
no way to know about that. I am curious about that because I'm curious about the efficacy of it. I'm concerned because even if it might be an industry standard, has it been an industry standard to clear an entire aquifer that's been contaminated to this extent? I don't know. We don't know if we have anything else to compare.
I'll say that I know that there are other Navy bases with GAC treatments. I just cannot say which ones because it might be defense critical infrastructure, but there are other ones within Region 9.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us are just not familiar with that technology and we want to be sure. And even we appreciate Kathleen, making sure that there is a pilot, in place. But it would be nice to be able to go to another community, find out what happened in that other community, because one of the things that I think somebody like myself is concerned about, and maybe others too, is forever chemicals, right? We're concerned with forever chemicals. And during the midst of the breakdown with the Red Hill system, I was working at the legislature and actually somebody from the United States government decided that they were going to give a presentation to the legislature about forever chemicals. So that was our first indication that it was never going to go away. And that whatever was contaminated or contaminated our water or soil it's going to be with us forever. So if it's going to be forever like Bemidji, because that was the example that they used in that demonstration, I think that was March of 2022. That they did the presentation for the legislature. I'm just concerned about that because if we are expected to live with this forever, what do we need to do? How do we need to be prepared? And is the GAP really going to solve the problem?
Kathy, did you have information to contribute in response to Lima's question?
Well, so I know Lima or someone in the CRI had asked if they could see a GAC and maybe that would help. I do know, and you had a question for Board of Water Supply. I don't know if your question was, where do they use the GAC and do they find it effective? And I don't know if that was going to be a question for the Board of Water Supply, but it is a technology that is used on Oahu. And the Board of Water Supply does use it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So my second question, and actually we do need someone from the Board of Water Supply to be with us. Thank you so much, Ms. Lynn. It is a question about the efficacy of GAC. That's one thing. But the other thing is, the Navy is under the impression that they can resume pumping water and that water won't migrate into any other wells. So the two-part question, one is how effective is GAC and how can we be sure that the GAC is going to be effective? And the second part is, how does the Board of Water Supply feel about the reopening, and does the Board of Water Supply think that their system itself will be safe, or do they think that there may be some migration?
Yulima, I appreciate that we might want the Board of Water Supply to contribute on this topic, but if we want them to speak at the meeting, we need to put them on the agenda in advance. Definitely invited to speak during the public comment period, or if you'd like to call the break early so that CRI members could confer and bring that information back to the table, that's also possible. What would you like to do?
We would like for the Board of Water Supply to. answer
Yeah,
the question.
I would like the Board of Water Supply to answer. This is important. They should have been at the table today. They should have been at the table. Because they're the main supplier and they're gonna be impacted and our water is gonna be impacted by whatever you all do. So. She's an expert. She knows what she's talking about. It's science-based.
Yeah.
We just need
Okay.
to know about the gap.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joyce. Thank you. You're gonna have to talk super loud. Thank you.
Go ahead, speak a little louder.
That helped answer the first part of it.
Yes, it's really helpful. It's reassuring. Thank you so much.
And then the second part was, sorry, would you mind?
I'm just curious about how the Board of Water Supply views the potential for reopening and what the Board of Water Supply plans to do to protect the rest of the water supply for the remainder of the island or the majority of the island, if there is some sort of migration.
Thank you for the question. So with the reactivation of the Navy's Halama shaft and or Red Hill shaft in the future, we defer to the Department of Health for all the regulation requirements and needed to bring the systems and bring the sources back online to meet water quality standards. In terms of our concern about whether the contaminations may migrate, there is still a lot of uncertainty, and we are very concerned about in terms of the uncertainty that reactivating may bring. Just because we're not sure what we're dealing with. There is, I know the treatment system for Ayahala Shaft is to help treat PFAS, PAH, and TTH. So whether restarting the well may sort of bring those contaminants westward from the Red Hill facility to Ayahala Shaft, or we're just not too sure how the underground water flow is moving right now. So, but yeah, so we are concerned, but we just look forward to more information that comes out from all the remediation work that's going on.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing her to share. I think it was helpful. Thank you.
No, I mean, again, we've got a robust monitoring network, groundwater monitoring wells. So when she talks about any sort of migration, right, that would be detected early, right, at both wells on premise as well as sentinel wells that are between us and the lava. There are lava shafts, which I don't know if they have intention on restarting their lava shafts or not. There's the point of the groundwater network is to do just that, to detect any sort of migration at all.
Still very sorry about this. Is there any possibility that they maybe had considered an alternate water source, like delivering a new water source and letting this water source heal itself, you know, instead of trying to push it and force it back open again? I think at a few meetings ago, the CRI had a couple of water companies come and show us how they can actually create water, like vaporizers kind of stuff. It's not very cheap. It is costly, but I'm wondering if that couldn't have been a good alternative, or why that's something that could not happen.
So there were consideration of whether you drill a new well, you do other sources and so forth. But again, we're guided by the data, and the data has been telling us we've got a robust amounts, years worth of sampling at this point, right? There's no contamination detected at the Red Hill Shaft. At Navy Isla Shaft, as Dennis actually commented, there was TPH detections that at the time, and even today, standards meet that are below the MCL. What we're doing in both Navy Isla Shaft as well as the Red Hill Shaft is we're installing treatment capability that will meet the 2029 standard of 4 parts per trillion, right? Which is why those treatment systems are designed that way. And as Dennis indicated, for Red Hill Shaft, the treatment facility that's going in there is a preventive measure. The water that is there per EPA's own inspection back in June, the water coming out of there was no TPH detected. I think it was trace levels of, if I remember right, about 1.2 parts per trillion, which is below the 4 parts per trillion for the 2029 standard. And we continue to sample water out of the well pre-GAC treatment and post-GAC treatment, and we continue to see no detections of TPH. So again, the treatment that we're planning is purely preventative in nature.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lacey.
Yes.
Are up.
Okay, I know we only have a few minutes. I'll try to be quick, but I will. Maybe. But first, I just want to start off with what's good, right? It's not what's good in the situation. But I am happy to hear that there is some sort of good, because that's better than nothing. So we'll take that as a good thing. I'll also note that I share the concerns of EWS. What will that necessarily do when those wells reopen? The rest of the island, and so nobody knows, right? So I'll just note that I share that concern. And then, you know, I'm looking at your PowerPoint here, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, it's good, you're not doing studies at the same time, you're not doing it at the same time, that's good. But what I would like to know is, you know, during the first CRI meeting, I asked, will you reopen the Red Hill Shaft without notifying families? And I was told that you would not do that. So now I don't see on here how you're going to notify the families, because, you know, I think what's not being said is that Red Hill Shaft is the most contaminated, right? So that's the one that I would want to know. How are you notifying the families? Just that, hey, these were previously contaminated, and we are going to reopen as well. And then second, like, also, the most contaminated well is now, because while the filtering is good, it's the same technology, right? So one has more contaminants and we're using the same solution. So it can only take out so much, right? It can't take out more than it can take out. So there will be contaminants left over to go through, right? That's given. But how will you notify the families? Are you going to specify that the more contaminated wells?
So the data tells us that there is no contamination detected and we're pulling water out of the Red Hill Shaft. That's just the bottom line. So I know you believe that the shaft is contaminated, but the data is telling us it's not. I'm not denying. The science tells us this. The data tells us this.
Also,
Yeah. Standing there, it's the health ends and took a picture in front of the gap filters because we thought that was gonna fix the problem. And it didn't. Our house came to have a sheet. It didn't. We kept sick as long as we did. So we adapted to this. So I'm terrified to hear that we're still denying contamination. Okay? And that we don't have a plan to the families and say, hey, this we're contaminated well. Well, there's no plan because we're not admitting there is anything there. If it wasn't there, we wouldn't be tax filtering, we might change this really expensive. I don't know how long these technologies are even gonna be there, and I don't want to discourage that because it's better than nothing. Okay. How long will those technologies be there? How long will the gap filters be in place?
So the permanent treatment facility is designed for 50, I think it's a 50-year life cycle. And again, that construction would start, sometime in 2026 and be operational sometime 2028. So we're talking 2078-ish. Again, I may be misrepresenting the life cycle, but I believe it was a 50-year life cycle design on that facility. So that is the intention, is to build that permanent facility that Commander Dunn talked about. The intention is to have that in place for the very foreseeable future.
So.
Yes.
Second. Clarification. All residents will be notified well in advance of any of these systems coming back online.
Are you gonna distinguish between the two wells?
Absolutely. So before Navy IA Halava Shaft goes online, there will be a notification sent via multiple ways. First to the residents, they'll get letters like that. We'll also talk to the PPV partners and provide them notice. We'll put out a notice in our weekly, we'll put notices on our app. So it will be well advertised before we come online.
This part's for the DOH. So when all of this comes about and it's actually operating and there's some safe amount of stuff coming, would you consider making some sort of eligibility for early intervention so that families, both military and civilian, who live on this line with getting these exposures can become qualified to at least get the occupational therapy or whatever they may need? Because as a parent, I saw my kids drink this stuff. I saw what it did to them, and they did. So I'm just thinking ahead here, since we're not able to, it's just impossible to stop it entirely. I'm thinking about what can we do that. Consider maybe some sort of.
I'll have to think about that. That's not, that's a different arm of the Department of Health, so. Well, I can't.
Is that all, Lacey? Okay, thank you. Marty, you're next.
So I'd like to offer some friendly, nice, pleasant feedback. The answer on where the GAC filter material goes was insufficient. It sounds like you don't have a plan for where the GAC content gonna go after it's done its job of cleaning the water. You said it's thousands of pounds of material, and you kind of like trailed off and be like, it'll go wherever it's supposed to go if it's not hazardous. That's our landfill, which is like at capacity and we're on knock down, drag out, fight about where the next one's gonna go. So you guys need to have a plan where you're gonna put the GAC material, after it's gonna be used. You don't know how much it costs. That's a concern to me. We need to know how much this costs. And I wanna know how long you're gonna do it for, right? It's gonna go till 2078 this round. I mean, but it's, the hint is in the name, it's forever chemicals. So what are you guys gonna set up a bond or something? How are we going to ensure that this GAC or whatever treatment system is in place forever, even after the US military is long gone from Hawaii, because someday it will be. I also wanted to comment on, one of you made a comment about how we're doing exactly what Board of Water Supply is doing in terms of GAC treatments. So using that logic, I would like to ask that you do the exact same thing that the Board of Water Supply is doing in terms of the testing and treatment, right? They have third-party testers, they test very frequently, and I think we need to be able to everybody follow the same testing protocols so that we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Okay, when will you be going before the Water Commission to inform them of your decisions about our water supply?
So we talked to the CWRM at the last meeting. We just opened the dialogue about the reactivation of the shafts. And then we present in May.
Present in late May.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You guys, how much water does the Navy currently use? Or even better, at the height, the day before the water was contaminated, how much water was the Navy using? It was running through the Navy system. It was all branches.
So we can talk about pumping capacity. With regards to daily water use, right? We cannot disclose that.
Okay, national security. Got it. I don't care. My point is that so what is the pumping capacity? How much are you?
So the pumping capacity of Alaba is 10 million. What is it? No, 15 million a day.
Permitted.
Yeah. What's the permitted? Try to the exact numbers.
Permitted for Waiaba is about 15 million gallons a day.
Okay, all right. So has any, in the course of considering installation of these gap treatment systems and reactivating these wells, to what extent has the Navy thought about reducing its water usage? Are you using R1 water for, you've listed off all these things that do not need to use fresh drinking water for? Hello. So, the industrial uses, you talked about like the industrial yard at Pearl Harbor, like how are you using alternative sources of water and how are you reducing water burden so that we don't have to pump so much water from this damaged aquifer?
So we don't have plans to create another water system for distribution along the installation. It's fairly cost prohibitive to achieve that.
Yeah, now that said, right, things like future projects, things like as we recapitalize our wastewater treatment plant, that does include recapturing that water. So purple pipes, right, for irrigation purposes and other things to, again, to reduce that. So if there are, it is in the thought process and in the execution process as we recapitalize things. And it will be really on a case by case basis as we look to do that, to reduce our water.
Is there timeline for when the wastewater system is going to be recapitalized?
That MilCon gets awarded next year.
Not certain.
Yeah, again, that's the joint base business. So outside the purview of our mission, but it is on the list of things that they are working to recapitalize.
I just want to demonstrate that there is a disconnect here, right? They want to line up, but what you guys are saying are two different things. Don't worry, ma'am, we're going to spend an unknown amount of money on installing these GACs, right? And we're going to do it forever. We're here for the long haul. We're going to stay here and we're going to use these GACs forever, and that's okay. At the same time, we're not going to make any investment in improving the water system, which we have all shown is already super nasty. There's geckos living in there, for goodness sakes. And you're not willing to make the kinds of investments in, we talked about the next agenda item in terms of reusing the tanks. So it's really problematic to me that on one hand, you guys are saying we are going to, no amount of money is too much for at least this idea that we want to impose, but we're not going to entertain any of these other ideas that are actually more fundamentally protective of the resource and people's health. I know.
So good one to follow up on. Thank you, Marty. Mine's is kind of going back in terms of like just the monitoring in regards to the gap treatment. Just really asking you guys, and it kind of follows up too from a question that Melody had asked earlier. Because she had asked about the monitoring frequency, and I know the response was about extensive, but like if you could like kind of elaborate on, what is extensive, like how often we're checking for the gap treatment as well as the entry point monitoring as well.
So definitely, so you have to clarify too. So there's GAC monitoring, or do you want also to hear about the groundwater monitoring wells monitoring?
Just the GAC for now. Okay. Yeah.
We monitor the, all three sources. Let's see, currently for the Wyava shaft, our active source, we monitor that every month. For the other two, we do quarterly monitoring from the EDWM, the Extended Drinking Water Monitoring Program that we have just concluded, but we are continuing to monitor the drinking water production wells regardless, while we conclude our reports and send that off. I'll speak to that a little bit later in the agenda tonight. We do uncontaminated regulated monitoring that all utilities do. That's semi-annual every 3 years. We've done that for our drinking water sources. We've had several inspections where we've done additional monitoring of the Wyava source and the Red Hill and maybe Lava Shaft. So there's a lot of data available. We also do groundwater monitoring for groundwater wells at Red Hill and around Red Hill, but we also include the Red Hill Shaft in that program of groundwater monitoring, and that data is on the website as well.
Yeah, and sorry, circling back, just like for the pilot program though.
Okay.
You guys are gonna be implementing,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So for the Navy Halava Shaft, pre-reactivation monitoring pilot that we're doing right now is we sample before. So just as far as sample points, on the influent between the tanks, because there's multiple GAC tanks that the water flows through. So between and then after. So we can observe the difference throughout this process. But we do that every about 48 to 72 hours. We're going to run this pilot for 30 days. So we have another week plus, or week and a half or 2 weeks of the pilot there. For the Red Hill Shaft, we haven't started that. We intend to do something similar for pre-reactivation monitoring as well. And it'll be similar in effort.
Thank you. And then
Certainly.
kind of building on that as well, as we're talking about the pilot, like what sort of monitoring equipment, if you could describe that you folks are going to be using. And yeah, I'll just stop there for now.
So we take actual samples and we send it off to a EPA certified laboratory in the United States, which is fairly standard here because there is no EPA certified laboratory on island to do that sample analysis and perform some of the EPA methods of analysis that are required to analyze some of those analytes. So they go to take hard samples and they send it off to the mainland for evaluation. We do that for the groundwater sampling as well.
Thank you. And then just final question, and maybe DOH can answer too, like if this is included as part of like the gap treatment, like permit conditions for the pilot program.
So it's not a permit issue, right? But it is part of the our ability to approve their, yeah, they have to finish the pilot and then do our assessment.
Got it. Thank you.
Karen, do you have a card up or was that a proxy for Lacey?
It's a card up,
Excellent.
but I'm not gonna ask you a question. I just want to make a statement, not for the sake of time, because I know that we're over.
We're okay.
Right.
We're all right.
I would like to kind of advocate for you guys, the people who are working in these facilities and working with the waste that comes out of the gap that may or may not be hazardous. I just want to advocate for hazard pay or the people who are working in this realm and are putting themselves in harm's way. I just don't want to see, 10 years down the line, the burn pit registry that this is, I would really like to see that. Also, towards the full side of the table, I would set up a question. I just would like to really ask that the prison be considered when notifying when the well is being reopened in Halava. I think that's a regulation that gets overlooked, and even if it's not considered directly on the water line, I think they are pretty impacted. And so like not only would I ask that of you guys there, but also the Department of Health, if you guys would just keep that on your radar as a very vulnerable population. They don't have choices in the matter. And then on that same note with Catalina Beach homes, maybe put it in their bills as well as you're notifying. I think that that would be an effective tool is to add. It's something that they would get, and the rest of us wouldn't be getting to see that. But be effective.
So if I could just on the, so we do communicate with the Department of Corrections. And we have been in communication with the Department of Corrections as we've done air quality monitoring, and they also are on distributions with regards to updates and all the things we're doing. So we have covered down on that already. With regards to Capitol Beach homes, right? We have provided all the information that we would send to our PPP partners, and that they included in their lease addendums and so forth. That is also provided to the Capitol Beach homes. We obviously cannot force them, but we do encourage them to do that very, very strongly. Yeah.
Just. Prison is on board. I know, but they're so nearby. I feel like there's a lot.
When they are monitoring, we did notify them.
Yeah.
So we'll keep them on the.
Thanks, here. And then the last point that I want to make is kind of to everybody here again. I know that none of you are the ones who were here and making decisions 3 years ago when this was occurring, immediately after. So I just want to ask that everybody in the Navy realm, please look forward to holding yourselves accountable to a standard higher than what was held at the time of the exposed to the fuel. And Board of Water Supply also please, hold them to a real high standard on reporting, whether it's reporting of tests of the water before the GAC treatment, so that we know what is being dealt with in the raw realm, but also the reporting of treatment, post-treatment. I guess that's what I'm saying. And I just, as an impacted resident, as somebody who drank the water and now walks with a cane, I just want to ask you hold it higher.
Thank you. I see a card up from Michelle and one up from Marty. Michelle?
Hi. So I attended the ACTAC meeting via Zoom. All discussions of the contents of the GAC filtration. If I'm recalling correctly, that it was going to place on the west side that is not disclosed. I am curious if there have been studies, and this is just me pitching a wild idea, that there have been studies done on oil spills on the US mainland, types of oil-eating fungi that were used to clean up oil spills. So curious if there has been any research done on using these types of natural remedies on these kinds of things, on the contaminants that are being pulled out through the GAC filtration systems, taken to be disposed of. Have you guys looked into like growing the fungi on it? It has they've discovered in these studies that the fungi will up the contamination and then it's not. So that might be cool, and that might be a great thing for us to look into as a way to deal with the contamination that's being pulled out of the well systems through the GAC and the ion exchange filtration systems and to these facilities where the contamination is being taken to. But I just had a friend tell me about that, and I was like, well, that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. Let's look into that. Like, so I'm just putting that out there. Since we have everybody, all the players in the room, like that sounds like a great natural solution. That might be a win-win for everybody. So we'll all note that down. It's called I looked it up on the internet, oyster mushroom. So yeah, let's get our best scientists on it and like check it out, because hey, maybe it might work. Let's try everything, right? As a survivor of, of all of this, and I'm just happy that we have all the players in the room and that we're talking about solutions
And I'm grateful for all of the research and the efforts in the science. And as a affected community member, I'm really happy to hear that you've been on Catalina Beach Homes telling them, hey, you might want to put this material in your, thing. So thank you.
We'll continue to do it. We just can't force them.
Yes, exactly. So myself as a resident of Catalina, I'm rallying my neighbors and we're working on that. We'll get them on it. So mahalo for that. That's really makes me feel great. And I appreciate the updates to the website that I see the well recovery and water resiliency page here. Looks good. And the contact us page, that's also wonderful because it makes the number more accessible, because before it was hard to find. Thank you for making those updates. Appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle.
I wanted to, I just want to make a few corrections. So, there's a little bit of loose language. Sometimes you guys say there are trace amounts and sometimes you guys say there are no contamination. So I just want to be very clear. It's not that there's no contamination in the groundwater. It's that it's below, for those contaminants that have regulatory limits, it's below that, just based on your own reporting, right? This is not third party. And that's just the trace amounts is not the same as no contamination. I'd like to ask, how long is the turnaround time? All this monitoring that you will be doing, how long does it take us to know that there's something in the water that we shouldn't be drinking?
So let me answer your first question. So I think you're confusing drinking water and groundwater monitoring. Right? So there are detections in groundwater monitoring. However, when I made the statement about we're not seeing it, right? So has been described, right? We test pre-GAC treatment, post-GAC treatment, right? We are not seeing, as we draw water out of Red Hill Shaft, we are not seeing any detection. Right? So groundwater, different than the drinking water. Groundwater, we do in specifically groundwater wells in underneath tank 5 area and some other areas in the tank alley, right? We will continue to have detections, right? But that is not in drinking water, right? Nor is Red Hill Shaft even connected to our drinking water system, but we continue to monitor it like it is connected to the drinking water system, okay?
And the plan is to connect it to the drinking water system.
Correct.
Right, so.
Again, the water we're drawing out of the shaft, we are not seeing any detections of any TPH in that water.
And I just want to note that this is the Navy doing these samples.
So
The third party doing the sampling?
Would you define what a third party is?
Someone's not the Navy.
So we don't have the Navy doing these sampling.
You have a contractor like
Correct.
AECOM who
Correct,
has
who
been through
then
this problem the whole time.
sends the samples to an EPA certified laboratory for analysis.
What I would like,
EPA and DOH both have oversight. EPA has done their own sampling, their own audits of our sampling process. So there is multiple eyes on our process, and it has passed muster.
it's been multiple problems with your process. And honestly, it's hard for us to keep straight. Our heads are spinning so bad on how, what was the proper sampling collection process? What was the proper testing protocols? Do we quench? Do we not quench? Et cetera, et cetera. There's been a lot of question about that. And what your mission is to rebuild public trust. Why not just follow the Board of Water Supply's lead? Use their testing protocols and their testing professionals. Honestly, AECOM's reputation is mud at this point because they poisoned our water. They helped. So I would like to see some other entity other than anybody who has already been involved in this contamination catastrophe testing the water. And I would like for it to be done on island. I think it's very problematic that it takes 2 weeks for a sample to go and come back before we know there's something in the water. That is unacceptable, especially if you're going to be reopening these tanks. I know that you're trying to build up our confidence and comfort with drinking this water, saying that there's trace amounts, but we also know that there has been thousands of gallons of PFAS concentrate released into the soil. It hasn't percolated down into the water supply yet. I want to see that you guys are testing the soil and trying to track that and catch it before it gets into the water. This attempt to try to assuage our fears by telling us there's nothing to worry about here. When we know that the water is contaminated, it's been contaminated since before November of 2021. We saw, you guys reported back last year that you were looking back with, 2020 hindsight, you could see spikes in contamination in the summer before November 2021. And so I think it's those kinds of situations that we are trying to help you anticipate and prevent, because we don't want our water to be further contaminated and we don't want people to drink contaminated.
So I'm not familiar with the pre-2020 reference, what you're can tell you that with regards to, I think it would be wonderful if there was an EPA certified laboratory here on island. I think Board of Water Supply would be happy. Everybody would be happy if there's an EPA certified laboratory. There's not. So, right, if there was an EPA certified laboratory, it would be faster and much cheaper for all parties. But there's not. So we're in a lockstep agreement. It would be wonderful that was in place. It's not. So we have to ship them off island to the mainland for analysis.
Why can't you build one?
So the Navy has offered, right, the previous administration offered to buy the laboratory equipment, right, for the state to set up an EPA certified laboratory, and nobody was willing to take it.
So you figure out another solution, find some, you build the lab because we need it, and we figure
So
out a nonprofit.
that is not how congressional appropriations work.
So the congressional appropriation go to you, the Navy, to build this laboratory, and then we can find some other way to operate it through the university, through a nonprofit. We need a lab on this island, and you should be advocating for that for us.
We continue to advocate for that, but with regards to how it's funded, that is not in the Navy's purview to directly say, hey, we're going to fund that. That would have to go through congressional appropriations in order to make that happen.
I see Bronson, I'm sorry, Kainoa and Michelle.
Oh, yeah, no, don't matter, sorry. But in respect to that, out of curiosity, like who wasn't willing to accept like having that laboratory? Who?
So Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Berger, I know, offered it. First, it was attempted to purchase, and there was laboratory equipment to purchase for the University of Hawaii that they're using today. And the goal there was to get them to establish an EPA certified lab, right? They did not do that. There's obviously the purchase of equipment, right, is a sunk cost, so to speak, of establishing it. And then there's a long tail of maintaining certification and expertise and so forth, right? Which is why I think they chose to continue to use it for research purposes. There has been discussions with the state of hey, buying equipment in order to fund the creation of a laboratory. But again, very difficult from an expertise standpoint to then maintain the tail that goes with the establishment of that lab.
Thank you. And then kind of following up from Marty's earlier question, because this whole thing is about earning trust too, right? Why can't Board of Water, be a part of the testing process, the monitoring that you folks are doing within your facilities?
So a couple things there. One, right, our testing regimen and our testing plan, right, is developed in conjunction with the experts from the regulatory authorities, EPA, as well as Department of Health. They've signed off on that on that testing plan, and we're executing in that testing plan using proven EPA methods. And that is what we're operating against, right? We have offered Board of Water Supply in the past to drill wells and use them for dual purposes, right? Mr. Lau has not taken us up on that opportunity.
Yeah, you can jump to the next person. I'm still thinking it's your process. But thank you though.
The discussion, I noticed, I remember the number 40, that you build 40 monitoring wells?
45.
45.
46, I'm sorry.
People to drill one, and I was like, oh, we should take you up on that offer, but that's a whole nother discussion, right? Like trust and all that stuff. Yeah, me as a outsider civilian, like, well, that, I mean, monitoring wells sounds like a good idea. My clarifying question that I had was the previous administration, Biden administration, offered an EPA lab, and the Secretary of the Navy was also attempting to get this EPA certified lab. And that makes me very happy, because it sounds like everybody in the room wants an EPA certified lab
And then now it's just a question of how do we make that happen? So that's fantastic. I feel that's a really good progress and have everybody agree on the thing. So how, did that get derailed exactly? The EPA lab did not get the funding because Congress did not approve funds?
No.
Or,
No, I know, I mean, Secretary Berger had several discussions with state officials, and it never moved forward. So I'm not gonna speculate on what state officials.
state. State. Yeah, so we,
Can I? So they, the secretary gave the proposal to give us the equipment to do, testing, but it came with conditions. And we could not accept the conditions. So that was the answer. And the other thing is, equipment is really difficult, it's really expensive to maintain. So you could give us the equipment, but you can't, but we have to be able to maintain it. So once the warranty is over, then it's very expensive to do all this. So there were lots of things that.
So, yeah, quickly, those conditions, would that be, here's the equipment now, it's up to you. Those are the conditions we're talking about.
No, there were other conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were other conditions. I can't remember what all the conditions were, but it wasn't something that we could accept, and it wasn't something that,
So we're gonna hear from Melody, and I see Uzima would also like to speak. I want to recognize that we're pretty far over the budgeted time for this item, and there are a number of items. We'd like to pare the break back to just 10 minutes to give people a moment. I'm definitely not saying this to try and squash good conversation, but just wanted to identify we might hustle towards the end of this meeting to get through all the good stuff. Melody, it's you, and then Uzima.
Okay, thank you very much. Facilitator. Laura. Okay, back to the PFAS, because that's really, something. Okay, so we have what was reported, insulate AFFF concentrate spill contained 191.5 billion parts per trillion of total PFAS. So it's like the largest, highest recorded amount worldwide was spilled, was that 3 years ago? Not even, almost 2.5 years ago. And then I'm further researching and it's showing that the GAC filters will only screen out the PFAS, but not the short PFAS. It can go through that membrane. And then it talks about the ion exchange resins, which can pick up long and short PFAS. But ultimately, the best way to make sure that the population is protected is through a high pressure membrane called reverse osmosis and nanofiltration. Has that ever been considered? Because that will collect both long and short chain PFAS used in municipal water treatment and home filtration systems. I mean, really, we've got the highest amount of spill when that happened. I think we deserve to have the most highest quality of filtration system available before even considering opening up the 2 shafts.
So yeah, so part of the reason why we're doing these reactivation monitoring pilots is to demonstrate that the treatment system will comply with the regulations for PFAS. So it will address, and that's also why there's an ion exchange element to the Navy IAEA Halava shaft treatment train, lead by GAC configuration, and then an ion exchange to address that.
So can we talk a little bit about the?
Can you
Yeah, so I worked the AFFF spill, so I was there. So the concentration, I can't remember the exact concentration, but that's pure product. So what happened is when
Pure
it's
what? I'm sorry?
pure product,
Okay, yeah, it's showing, it's coming up at 191 point.
Premix.
Yes, so it's even more of a concentration?
No.
No,
That's
no,
not-
so what I'm
1.5
saying is,
billion?
that's what it is when it comes out of the system. It hit the ground. We then excavated thousands of cubic yards of soil around that site, and then we sampled the soil underneath it. We also then put a cap on top of it, so rainwater can't get on top of it. We are 200 feet above the aquifer at that point. Now, the CERCLA team, which I think the RAB you guys are familiar with, are doing a PFAS study up at that site. And if they find that they need to do additional excavation, if they need to do additional remediation, they will do more at that site. So there is an ongoing study for PFAS at that site. But the initial action that was taken was to remove as much of that contaminated soil as we could, so that that concentrate would come down through and into the aquifer.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the filtration, at this point,
Yes, ma'am.
is sufficient.
Thank you, Melanie. Moving back.
Sure. I just wanted to follow up and I wanted to thank Kathleen so very much for jumping in and helping us to understand the dilemma that you're in when you were presented with the offer of the testing facility. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on the conditions for you, and then if the Navy would consider going back to the table and removing whatever conditions or whatever was impeding our state government from accepting the very generous offer, because we've actually been promoting legislation that would do a similar type of, provide that kind of testing. So I think the entire community would really appreciate having that. We could collaborate on the conditions.
Can't remember all the conditions, and Wayne in the back was also talking to us about that.
I want to offer, is this a good future agenda item? I realize, Kathy, you might not have everything at your fingertips. Is this something that we could put on the agenda for our next meeting? Ilima, would that be okay?
Totally fine.
Okay.
I just like the fact that we know this, because I don't think anybody knew that there was an offer made, but we couldn't accept it because the gift was too much for you to accept. In terms of the management, yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, can we put on the agenda items, any ideas or concepts on how to facilitate getting the funds, the ongoing funds to for the state of Hawaii to maintain said facility? Because not only would it benefit the state of Hawaii, it will benefit the entire Indo-Pacific region. Because, essentially, we could get monitors at Guam, Japan, everywhere there's a base, or any other facility that, any place in the Indo-Pacific region. It can facilitate all those areas, and perhaps all of those areas might contribute some sort of financial contribution to said facility, because they would benefit from it as well, right? So like maybe there are financial resources outside of just the state of Hawaii that would contribute, perhaps even other countries that would benefit from an EPA certificate that's closer than the US may.
Thank you so much. I recognize the importance of this robust topic. I'm going to revise everything that I've said. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, give folks a moment to get some nutrition, get some water, take a break. We'll come back in 5 and get started with our next topic. If you would like to make public comment, enter your interest in the chat if you're online, or see Alejandro in the beautiful shirt if you're here in the room. I know.
Yeah, you're still.
Found it. You're just gonna make sure you're muted.
Problem is, okay.
We have to cut things from it. We want to cover both the remaining topics, small amounts, or just go deep on deep-ish.
Okay.
So the two topics are the discussion about tank cleaning and the future of tanks. And then the second topic was 3 updates from Navy responding to CRI requests, long-term remediation, extended drinking water monitoring plan, and communications with residents.
Which one to do, Mike?
I want to cover everything. Okay. So 15 minutes for each of these two like lumps of things. We'll see how we go.
Okay, let's go.
Sounds good? All right, ready, set, go.
Don't ask, Captain McCormick, Chief Staff is gonna talk through update on tank cleaning, as well as the future of the tanks.
All right, good evening. My name is Kevin McCormick. I've been with the Navy Closure Task Force for about 8 months now. I'm a little bit of a new face, but I was on the Joint Task Force before that. Mirrored the issues that we're working with here. And what I'd like to do is provide you sort of an overview of our tank cleaning, where we are in the schedule, and offer you guys some opportunity, obviously, to ask some questions. Next slide. Okay, so first I just want to orient you and the audience out there in virtual land on the slide in which we're looking at right now. And then we'll kind of go through step by step what it means for those tanks. Let me get my glasses on as well here. So, and I see we're all looking okay as I get older. So first off, tank cleaning is a 4-step process. And let me start from the top by saying we are on schedule and on plan for the closure and decommissioning of the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. And our tank cleaning plan supports that. So there's 4-step process. So that first yellow block is the preparation, and I won't read the bullets to you. That's right there in front of you in the sake of time. Step 2, that's salmon color. Step 3, the pressure washing, and then step 4, that chartreuse kind of color is our 4-step process. Now those colors are then applied to those tanks to kind of give you a step-by-step understanding where we are. So let's talk about the tanks. So there are 20 underground tanks at the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. And let's talk about the size and scope of these tanks if you're unfamiliar with them. So for those who may have attended an open house or one of our events, we have a scale model that shows you Aloha Tower inside a tank. That is accurate. These tanks are 100 feet wide and 200 feet tall. Each one could fit Aloha Tower. And I provide you that so you understand not only the size, but the scope and effort required to apply that 4-step process. So when you see those timelines next to that in terms of months, there's a reason we have that long time because of the nature of the problem that we're working towards to clean these tanks to the highest standard we can. So that if you look at tanks 3 and 4, 5 and 6 and 7, 8, have those colors applied to them. Those are the steps in which we are at for those particular tanks. For the eggshell color tanks, and then the pewter kind of colored tanks, the eggshell ones are the ones that are on our list next up for that 4-step process. And the darker pewter tanks are tanks that were taken out of commission prior to 2021. So they're somewhat dormant. They are part of our decommissioning plan. So right now we're addressing those tanks that were not taken out of commission, going after them with that 4-step process. And at the end of that, we go after the darker colored ones. In terms of timeline, okay, so for the tanks to which will go through that 4-step process, we're on plan to complete that mid-2027. For the darker colored tanks, or the ones that are already out of commission, we put them at the tail end, and we've provided extensive time to go after them like we would a real tank that requires all the 4 steps, and that takes to about mid-2028. But there is opportunity as you look at those tanks, if they meet the criteria, since they are dormant, that could move up and we could move that timeline if it aligns with both EPA, DOH, and we have the regulator concurrence for that. That's something for the future for discussion, but we are looking at the opportunities to do that. That picture right there, that depicts step 3, the pressure washing. And we provide that along with a diagram to show how complex of a problem this is. Everything is done safely in accordance with OSHA standards, but there is particular equipment, gear, and really, I use the word infrastructure that is required to install in each individual tank to go through this. You see those booms, I'm going to use that extending out with the workers on that to conduct the pressure washing. Those have to be installed, inspected to the highest industry standards before we even start. And so again, this is part of that preparation process before we get in steps 2 and 3. And it is very in-depth and thorough for the top, the most important is the safety of our workforce and those around us. So to your point earlier, when we talked about the hazards, that's something we really take on board and really care about. Correct. It is a varsity level event, but this is a varsity level problem that we're attacking. Because again, it is important to us to get after these tanks in accordance with our plan to close and decommission the facility. No, they are not. This is a contracting company, so this is not a military. So hazard pay is a military term. So I'm sure we're all familiar, and I don't mean to talk like that, but this is how I have to go the base level for myself. Usually I have my wife explain my LES to me and where my money's going. So when it comes to hazard pay, that is something that has to go specifically approved through the DoD, through Congress. All of that sort of steps we talked about with the EPA lab and everything else. We wish you can go A to B, solve a problem, but unfortunately, there are steps in between there that require higher level approval, justifying the hazard and go through step by step by step. In this case, this is a contracted company, civilians who are conducting that effort. I don't think I'm at liberty to
So
say.
no,
unless you-
Aptum is the
Yeah.
prime contractor, and they have a number of Aptum solutions.
Yep.
So they're the prime contractor, and then obviously they have a number of local subcontractors that work with them on this problem.
How much are they getting paid?
I do not have that off the top of my head.
No problem. I think I'm going to pause right there because I know we're short on time, but it's kind of give the group opportunity to ask some questions. If that's okay, Laura.
15 minutes, Dr. Stacy.
They were not. So Aptum has been the clean inspect repair contractor for many years. So the tanks that are in pewter, so tanks 13, 14, 17, and 18 specifically, they had gone through the process to clean them, inspect them, repair them, recoat them, and then they were never reused.
Did Acton clean and repair tank 5 that linked to 2024 and 2014?
No, I do not believe they were the contractor. Yeah, they were not the contractor.
What is being done to ensure that this contractor doesn't have similar messes up?
So we have a very robust process to review all of what we refer to, right? So sort of all the operations and execution. So op orders, concept of operations that go through a lengthy process, depending on the risk level of that endeavor. Either I'm the approval authority, or Admiral Barnett's the approval authority, or Com Kaler's the approval authority.
Is this information public?
What information?
Whatever robust monitoring system that you are, I mean, I understand that you were trying to give us confidence that you were on it, but given all of the exceedances that we've already experienced, we need additional oversight. I am concerned that we're still seeing documentation that is redacted. I mean, this is no longer as, this system is going to be shut down. Why is any of the information about it being redacted? And I would like to, I want to provide that oversight ourselves, please.
So I would offer that every step of the way at the working group level, we are working with both the EPA and DOH. We have a very robust, as the Admiral talked about, battle rhythm we call it throughout the week, where we have working meetings where we work up with these CONOPS. This is all military jargon. What basically this is we have working groups and we put together a plan on paper and we work through our counterparts of the EPA and Department of Health. We take their input, their guidance, and their regulatory advice, and we adjust our conduct as required when it comes to safety of the environment or other. And the highest steps of regulations are taken into account. If they say we cannot do something, then we take that into account and we move forward. And that's the oversight that we use when we create any kind of concept operation plan to execute this. One last thing, and I'll take the floor back, is that this whole diagram is on our app. So this is not something that you have to wait for every CRI or any CWORM or FTAC or Red Hill Remediation Roundtable or any of the other events we attend. But you can download the app. That is not an endorsement of the Navy. If you download the app, and you can enable push notifications. So Ben mentioned the Red Hill Weekly. That's on there. We have a schedule with regards to our webinars, our podcasts, and other. They are all available to you at the palm of your hand, and this information will come to you. And it also gives you an opportunity to ask questions if you have a question about that information, and that'll be brought to our attention. So this diagram, this whole process is transparent to the public and available to all those who own a phone, Google, Android, or other. It works in all of them.
Okay, thank you. With regard to Aptum, I'm showing that the Navy whistleblower case alleged that contractors, including Aptum, failed to properly install and maintain fire suppression lines at Red Hill, contributing to the fuel leaks. Now, if that's the situation, why would you use them again? Because they have caused such a 93,000 people, put them all in jeopardy, and many of them, thousands of them, have been filed this lawsuit. So I'm just wondering, did we not learn from the first incident? I mean, if it wasn't for Aptum, then this may not have happened. This 2021 leak may not have happened if the fire suppression system worked accordingly. So please enlighten me why you would use the same company again. Thank you.
So I think so the fire suppression system has nothing to do with the 21 spill.
I beg to differ.
Okay.
I beg to differ, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where the fuel ended up within the fire suppression drainage system. Had it been working correctly, that fuel would have been discovered and it would not have gone into the aquifer. Now, I can stand corrected otherwise, but to my understanding, that was a situation. If the fire suppression system worked accurately, it would not have been hidden in those fire suppression drain, which it was from May 6th, I believe, 2021 until November 20th, 2021, when that golf cart maintenance person hit already substandard pipes, PVC pipe, which then caused the rupture. So tell me, if the fire suppression system worked as accordingly, then would that fuel have been stuck in that pipe and then subject to the breakage that had happened 2 years ago?
So what you're referring to is there was a design change that was signed off on. Right, again, we were part of that contract, but there was a review process that signed off on the design change to move it from stainless steel pipe or steel pipe to PVC pipe. That's the underlying issue with where the fuel sat and waiting, right, for that cart to hit it. Right, but the contractor, right, the Navy signed off on that design change.
Why, when PVC pipe is substandard and not according to code, would that even be signed off on?
So again, the AFFF retention system was never meant, right? The person who signed off on that never contemplated that fuel may enter that pipe.
Okay, I can see that, but PVC piping should not have been used at all in a fire suppression system, whether or not fuel was contemplated to enter a porous material.
Sir, this is part of also ongoing litigation, so this is something we probably shouldn't discuss just here. Yeah.
Like me, why you would use a company that already showed failure again to make sure that the pipes are adequately cleaned?
So again, I think as cause McCormick has stated, right? So all this is part of ongoing litigation, right? So we're not going to comment further.
Okay. Notwithstanding the ongoing litigation, then why would you use a company that was already shown to be negligent, gross negligence?
I would argue
Again,
whether they've been shown or not is a matter of opinion. Number one. Number two, like I've stated, this is ongoing litigation, so we're not going to comment further.
Okay, thank you.
Got a minute. So we're at the quarter of the hour.
And so I have an objection to using a firm that there's some question about. So if there is any ongoing litigation, if you can't comment about it, and if the question about whether or not Aptum was negligent is still lingering in the air, I object to the Navy employing them. I'm sure that there must be some other contractors that haven't contributed to the contamination that the Navy could fall on. So perhaps you can consider that. That's my objection. My question I wanted to thank you for providing us with the updates on the tank closures. My question along those lines are, what's being done with all of the materials? I think it's sort of along the lines of what Marty talked about with the waste materials. What's being done with all of that waste materials? Where's anything that comes out of those tanks? Where's that material going?
So it's getting shipped back to the mainland.
Okay, the continent?
Correct.
Will go there?
So, well, the sludge is.
Correct.
That is
Good- good-
containerized and shipped
good
back to the
distinction.
mainland, for proper disposal.
Okay.
And,
To an EPA certified facility
Yeah.
for disposal.
and a question, and Michelle said earlier regarding FTAC, talking about GAC carbon that was going to the west side. It was actually not, that wasn't what we were talking about FTAC. We were talking about the water from the pressure washing. So I just want to distinct that. And I didn't interrupt you beforehand, but I remember that comment from before. So, yeah, so the water from the pressure washing is going to a DOH certified or DOH company on the west side. However, the other material, as Admiral Williams was talking about, is going to mainland. So just so we're clear.
Thanks for acknowledging my objection to using a firm where there's some question about their tactics or their tactics.
I want to ask, what is the future for the tanks and the guidelines?
So beneficial reuse, right, is not in the purview of our mission, right? So our mission is clear, safe, close, decommission, we're on that. With regards to ultimately, that'll be a decision, a recommendation that the Department of Defense makes, that ultimately Congress will make a decision on. And then any decision for beneficial reuse would go through a full NEPA process.
I was shocked to learn how much the tanks corroded over their 80 years. You know, the lining, the metal lining inside the tanks is very thin, a dime thick. So they are corroding. What happens in 20, 30, 50, 100 years? If these tanks are not physically removed, if they are not somehow filled in, will they collapse?
So there was a study done, I believe we have it on I don't know if it's on our website or Navy Region's website, that looked at the structural integrity of the tanks over the life cycle. It looked at, okay, hey, major earthquake event, whatever it is. So essentially the bottom line of the Reader's Digest version is maybe 300 years, you have some concrete spalling, and maybe 500 to 1,000 years from now, you may have some structural issues with tanks. But behind the, so you have the steel plating that sits behind that you have feet of concrete, and behind that you've got gut. And so from a structural integrity standpoint, based on the study that was done, we're confident that there's not going to be issues with it in the near future. And again, we'll continue to monitor those tanks as part of the closure plan, right? The ongoing, right? There will be continued monitoring and evaluation in the future of the structural integrity of the tanks.
So in the event we do have corrosion and breakdown of the tanks in some future distance, what assurances do we have here that the Department of Defense is going to be here for us? Like, is there a bond to ensure that we have a bucket of money we can use to help do whatever needs to be done in the event, something unforeseeable happens, which surprisingly happens quite a bit around Red Hill. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are in terms of.
So again, I think that's going to be based on the ongoing monitoring and evaluation of the structural integrity. And should an issue be identified and work with regulators of what course of action then there is taken, and then working back through Congress for appropriations. That said, do not expect in my lifetime, my children's lifetime, or their children's lifetime and beyond having issues based upon this on the study that was done.
Well, we're looking for longer phasing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, we have lightning round for the final topic. Dates from you all in 3 separate topics. Go.
All right, Ben, gotta be quick.
All right. Okay, Gherkin water monitoring. The next slide. Okay. Overview of our enhanced drinking water monitoring. So the Navy's pursued a comprehensive methodical approach to recover the Joint Base Robert Hickam drinking water system in response to the November 21 release. In late 2021, in December, the Navy and the Army, DOH and EPA and some other subject matter experts had convened to create an interagency drinking water systems team. That team developed the plan to recover the system, which involved a zone by zone flushing plan, which was then executed by the Navy over a period of 3 months. At which point the Department of Health inspected and endorsed that plan, indicating that the system had recovered. They amended their health advisory, and then the Navy entered a 24-month, 2-year drinking water long-term monitoring program, which concluded last March 2024, which before the end of that, the Navy committed to voluntarily extending enhanced drinking water monitoring. And so then immediately commenced the extended drinking water monitoring program, which has since in the last month concluded sampling efforts as part of that program. We are still waiting on a few final validated results. We're composing the final report, articulating and capturing all of the results collected during the extended drinking water monitoring. And we will be submitting that to EPA and DOH here in the next month for their review and approval to effectively close the extended drinking water monitoring program. While that period transpires, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to continue closely monitoring the drinking water sources, well, the source, and then the other 2 shafts as we had throughout this program. So collectively, through the last 3 plus years of enhanced drinking water monitoring, we've collected over 16,000 samples. We have not detected JP5 or petroleum in the drinking water system. And so we are now in the phase pending EPA's endorsement to return to only compliance monitoring. And before, during, and after all of this enhanced drinking water monitoring, the Navy has been conducting routine compliance monitoring with complying with the Safe Drinking Water Act and the lead and copper rule, and also with Navy policy, the lead in priority areas rule. And so I'll press forward. Take your time. Next slide, please. So we engaged with the residents and consumers on the joint-based drinking water system last spring in conjunction with the extended drinking water monitoring program. We expanded our response to water quality concerns with the establishment of a water quality action team that has a more robust response measure. That number, as discussed earlier, is there. It's on the website on a few pages. We continue to conduct drinking water information booths across the distribution system at community centers and or more over the mini marts and the Navy exchanges. And that's April's schedule. We will have May's schedule up soon. And then down in the bottom right, as articulated, those are the recent water quality concerns that the Navy's received across the joint base system. It's a handful of reports each month. A concern may be an inquiry. It may be a request for additional sampling. It may be a request for information, et cetera. Next slide. We continue to offer multiple resources to residents. We had updated our resident resources guide over the past year, and we're in the process of doing that again to provide to consumers. We continue to participate in monthly forums, the Coupling and Beach Homes Night Market, the Newcomers Fair, the Joint Base Informational Assembly. As new folks come into the installation, then that we have the opportunity to provide updates and provide awareness of what happened and share what resources are available for folks. We continue to provide information and updates on our Safe Waters website, which we are in the process of revising our contact resource page to provide additional resources as well. We also provided information to be included as a lease addendum to our military housing partners to include in leases for new residences. And next slide.
So that is all.
And almost done. And Jerry, over to you for.
Sure, I'll just be really fast here, because we've talked about a lot of this. You know, we've looked at a lot of different ways to share more information in a multitude of venues. We talked about we're hosting quarterly webinars. We take, what we try to do is the information that we put out on the webinar is pertinent to what's going on at that time. So on April 29th, there's going to be a webinar solely committed to the reactivation of Navy IAA Halava shaft. It's open to the public. The link to join will be available on our website. We talked a little bit about the upcoming open house on May 21st. It's going to actually be in this facility right here. And there'll be more information posted, as we get closer to it on times and what kind of booths we're going to have available at it. The two things I wanted to quickly call attention to is, based on public feedback, we have now hosted on our app, what we call the Red Hill highlights. It's a one-page summary that provides you a snapshot of the big items that are going on that week at Red Hill or items of interest that we're hearing about. So it's a quick way to just get a one-page summary for that week of what's going on. And then finally, the podcast. We are hosting podcasts weekly. We bring in SMEs to talk about topics with Admiral Williams, and those are also available on our app and also on YouTube. So if you have questions about any of the communications or engagement, we can talk afterwards, but in the interest of time, we'll just clear it off there.
Thank you. We have 4 minutes to handle questions. I've got my Marty and Tara. Fine. Oh, and Alima, I'm so sorry. Hello. Oh, I gotta send up, yeah.
So both the long-term monitoring and extended drinking water monitoring sample protocols for lead were not consistent with the protocols required in the lead copper rule. The screening of the 5 micrograms per liter to the public is not a health relevant number. It's an action level that indicates adequate control for erosion. And even the EPA is stating that nobody should drink the water with up to the 15 micrograms per liter of lead. And we all know no amount of lead is safe. So there's a 2-part question. Do you endorse a 15 milligram liter per liter action level, or should this be lower, knowing that this water serves the CDCs, the child development centers, schools, and young families, including expectant mothers? And are you going to replace the lead in the copper pipes? Because we all know that table, when I talked to them before, said there is lead and copper in the pipes through soldering. So my house still detects for lead and copper. Are you going to replace pipes, and are you going to replace water heaters and everything instead of using PVC and lead and copper?
Thank you. So for the one comment about the testing protocols for LTM and EDWM. So we conduct and meet the Safe Drinking Water Act and lead copper rule requirements. The Navy has a pretty robust lead screening program. The testing for lead that is done under those programs are not the same type of testing that is done by lead and copper rule. So compliance is based on the lead and copper rule. We do have protocols when we detected lead in those programs to clear it through flushing and replacement of fixtures. As far as the threshold for complying to, that's really not up to the Navy. We are absolutely 100% intent on complying with whatever the established threshold is to meet regulatory requirements. So I would have to defer that to DOH and EPA. And plumbing, we do have a recapitalization program for the distribution system that, like any water utility, to go in and replace pipeline. Within the homes themselves, the majority of the military housing is a privatized housing. So the private entity owns the plumbing, the premise plumbing within those homes.
We have 1 minute that remains.
I need 20 seconds real quick. So in the interest of transparency, I did a quick follow-up, and Ms. Melody, your comment about Aptum, they were not the contractor. They were the contractor that replaced the bad contractor. And I just want to make that clear, because Aptum, and I was familiar with this, was in charge of the over 253 repairs after the fact that enabled us to defuel Red Hill of the 104 million gallons. So Aptum is the good contractor. And I just want to say that out loud so that we don't besmirch their name. And I had some doubts, but I don't want to speak out until I got confirmation. So we're good there now, but we'll be happy to follow up on anything else you have regarding that. Sorry.
Thank you. We're not.
Kevin.
I realize we're not getting to the remaining questions that are up. I would encourage the CRI to submit those in writing as part of the April questions
Yep.
for these agencies to respond to. They'll take questions from you monthly. I'm so sorry. We're gonna move to public comment.
Sorry. One question. So I noticed, we got a set of questions for EPA and DOH, and I think there's a set there, and you guys are looking for a response to these questions. Okay,
From last year.
okay,
These are
got it,
carryover questions.
got it. Okay, all right.
But they can add more questions for this.
Yeah, so we have a process and we can, fill you in after the fact about the questions. Okay?
Yeah, so on those questions, I remember from the FTAC meeting, and I was excited for this prospect of the Let's Talk Red Hill Weekly podcast. Like a school that is available to the public. And then I remember that said that we're always looking for ideas, and I'm like, wow, great, that we have ideas. So like, that's 300 questions worth of material, which is great. So like, I hope that this is useful for the Let's Talk Red Hill podcast. And I personally offer half of the CRI to help facilitate
And just for clarification, right? So we use the questions that we get in public feedback to feed into what Sherry talked about, podcasts, Red Hill Weeklies and so forth, right? What you're not going to get is a one-for-one answer back, right? And so per the ACO, we collect, right? And for commonly asked questions, right, we will update our FAQs on our website. And then we'll also take and look at, hey, how, is this something that if the public's interested in? So we'll create a podcast, or maybe we do a webinar and so forth, right? But with regards to getting a one-for-one answer back, you will not get that.
So does that mean we will not get a?
You will not get an answer back on a
we
one-to-one
will
answer.
provide you EPA, the questions you guys gave us, provide you a direct response.
But the
back.
Navy will not.
Correct.
Their contact, can we email?
So there's a process that I think Amy's gonna go through on how to go through.
Adjourn this portion of the meeting and move to public comments. My colleague Alejandro is going to read the list of speakers in order. Each speaker has 2 minutes to make their comments to this group. Responses are not provided in this meeting, although they might be provided after the fact. I want to identify for folks that are online and here in the room. If you exceed the 2-minute mark, I will provide you with a warning, after which we're going to suspend the ability for that person to speak online. And we'll mute the mic here in person. I was asked to please try and hold people to the 2 minutes that's listed in the ground rules. I recognize it's really challenging. I've probably just spent 2 minutes telling you that. We're gonna go. Alejandro, please read the list.
I'm an ex-inmate of Alabama Prison, and I've been to the first meeting last year in November. And I'm finding out all kinds of stuff about the Navy. I'm glad the Navy's here to hear this out. Ernie Lau, I speak to him last November. He told me straight up that he will reroute the water to the prison. So I'm figuring, why you will reroute the water to the prison when I know for a fact we was drinking dirty water. I'm not blaming nobody. I just like get answers. I like get the facts from the bottled water supply, from the EPA. Why nobody was investigating the reason for Halaba getting their water rerouted? And I know for a fact, because I was there, I was drinking dirty water. I was talking to ACOs who don't drink the water, who tell me straight up, you guys are drinking dirty water. For real. Guys who work there. The reason why this thing came about is because I was watching the news one morning. One segment, Kahu Kaleo Patterson talking about the guys in Halaba drinking dirty water. I'm like, oh, no wonder I was all passed up the last time I was in there. 15 months. And you cannot run away from the water when you look at them, the thing on rainbow inside. You cannot run away from them. But I'm glad the Navy is here. I like ask the Navy, how long did you guys know about Hawaiian cement, blowing explosive, dynamite? If we can feel them in the prison, I never know that you guys was right there on the side of the prison. In the same area. I didn't know all this. We could smell all kind of things. But still, these guys blowing up dynamite right by the prison. We feeling them. We feel the shakes, but we feel the earth move. How that fragile facility, when I found out, I was like, oh, how that facility will handle? How that facility will handle all these explosions? I started getting locked up in Harlem from 1989. And we couldn't use our backyard because it was blowing up dynamite and we could feel them, you know? And I was like, holy smokes, these guys give a facility right there. What's really happening? Why was the water rerouted to the prison? And I heard somebody say, oh, water supply to take care of the prison's water. Where the water coming from? I like answers because I get health issues from 15 months of doing time in there till today. I mean, this has got to be, this is something that is just crazy to me. It's very crazy, and I appreciate the Navy. And I hope you guys recognize, I hope you guys see that the Red Hill, what happened in Red Hill was just the open up for all the cover up that was being drowned, was being buried. The 2014 spill. What about that one? 2 million gallons of fuel gone. I'm digging in now, I'm doing my research. I'm like, holy smokes, this is insane. This is Hawaii. We drink water out of pipes any place. And I get health issues because of this today. And I'm not blaming nobody. Let's get the facts straight. Let's get it right. Let's uncover why everything going down like this.
So up next, we have Susan Gorman Chang, who wanted to talk about the Red Hill community involvement.
So I have a request, but I want to give you some context. So at the last Eva Beach Neighborhood Board meeting, a Navy person came and wanted to give a presentation. I don't know if it was this or what it was, but they weren't on the agenda. And so that would have been a violation of our sunshine laws. So my request is if anybody from the Navy is going to give a presentation, they need to contact the neighborhood board to get it on the agenda. Otherwise, you will be in violation of the sunshine law. So just respect for our laws here in Hawaii. And it's on the neighborhood board website as far as how far ahead you need to put that to the board for them to agree that it's an agenda item. Thank you.
Up next, we have Tara, who wanted to talk about drinking water and groundwater.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention again, because we're here 4 years later. And now I just want to say this, why we should not even think about reopening the 2 shutdown wells. You Navy were responsible for bringing the CRB to the islands, and now our other water source that comes from, our plants, from our trees is now seriously in danger. So if we can't even trust the water that is coming through the piping and through this whole meeting that we have here, now our other water source from the coconut, we don't have as well. So why you're like, hey, so that's drinking water, groundwater. So when you look at this, think about this. We need water to not only to drink, but also to grow the food that we need here for our islands. Now, when you look at this, think about this. We have some endemic plants. We have like the native plants right there, the endangered plants. Can you imagine? So not only us as people, but the island, the food source, the water source. So when I heard you say, Department of Health and the Navy, that it costs too much money. It costs much more to poison every living thing, which includes people, plants, animals, on this island. So use all the money that you guys have access to remediate these plans. And the fact that you cannot answer because the litigation is still going right now, that you need to realize that health of the people is of utmost importance. That's your number 1 priority. So please keep that in mind. Do not even think about opening the well, because you heard the CRI saying today of all the issues that still are in place and that are occurring. Yeah, so it's our food source and it's our water source. So mahalo.
So up next, we have Melanie Lau, who wanted to talk about drinking water.
The Navy is testing the water at the source, whether it comes from the Wayaba shaft or the soon-to-be opened Navy Area Halaba shaft for PAH, PFAS, JP5, JP8, and the other contaminants. And you, the Navy, are confident that the water is safe. Yes? Thank you. Great. It seems the water sources are safe or will be with the GAC filters. We'll have to come to that. But the pipes were not changed out. And as you said tonight, you do not plan to install a new water distribution system because it is cost prohibitive. And the extended drinking water monitoring program has been terminated. So how will you assure Lacey, the Capilina home residents, and the other folks on the Navy water distribution system that the water coming to their homes and out of their taps and their showers is safe and will continue to be safe in the decades to come? I got 50 seconds for an answer. So that goes on the agenda next time. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll be going to our first virtual one, so please be patient with us if there's issues immediately. We'll go with former CRI member Mandy Fine. Oh, excuse me, member Mandy Fine. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
They can hear you, Mandy. They just can't talk back while you're talking. So go ahead.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, Mandy Fine, and thank you so much for the clarification about me still being on the CRI, but participating as a member of the community for tonight. I had planned on divulging what it is that the CRI has been through over the past year and a half. But for the sake of time, I would just like to highlight the true Rosa Parks moment that happened at the start of the CRI meeting, as it paints a picture of what it is that both the EPA and the Navy has put the members of the CRI through over the past year and a half. And that is stepping outside of the lane of their job. And so for the purpose of this, that was to rebuild trust. Trust has clearly not been rebuilt, meaning you failed. You failed at your job. And so just as Marty and other members tonight, took issue with the fact that Optum and AECOM are still working on this problem set, and we've asked for them to be removed because there is no trust there, right? I would also ask that the members who are part of this original group, Amy, you being one of them, and a couple of the admirals, Admiral Williams that are on there, I would ask that you guys also remove yourself. Captain McCormick, I guess, is new. Commander McCormick, excuse me. And he seems to be trending as, in our group chats as someone that's likable. So I appreciate your respectfulness towards our community. But it's a little bit triggering and concerning that when the sole purpose is to rebuild trust, somehow the EPA thinks that the purpose of the Constitution is not to limit government power and take away the rights of our citizens. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression are covered in our Constitution. And it's not your job to take those people's rights away. So what you did to Wayne and Madison and me and other members of this community, try to silence us by using words like decorum, is absolutely wrong. This institution poisoned our island. This institution poisoned our people, our children, and we have absolutely every right to continue to be upset about it. Certainly, when you haven't shown up for the past year. So again, my request for this community in order to truly rebuild trust is that you all would remove yourself and put some new members on the team who can actually meet the mission of this CRI. which is to rebuild trust with this community. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're sticking online, and I can call the next speaker, so I have to keep going back and forth with the room. Patty Choi. Do we have Patty Choi on?
Patty, you're able to talk now.
Patty, are you on? Okay, saw you come off mute. All right. While you're working through the technical difficulties, maybe we'll come back to Patty. Is Meredith Wilson on? I think they're still being promoted to speaker. Patty, I see you're off mute. Are you able to talk now?
Can you hear me? Testing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. I just need a clarification. Assuming that permits are granted to the Navy to start operating their wells, could you clarify how long the permits will be effective for? My concern is that they would be very long, over 10, 20 years, possibly. And if something arises problematic, the community won't be able to fight back because we'll be locked in with these permits. So I'm hoping the permits can be really short spans of time, but I don't know if someone could clarify that for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing responses right now, but perhaps they can follow up with that in writing or for future agenda. Let's go to Meredith.
Aloha, everyone. I should not have to thank the Navy for being here today. They are required to attend. The EPA's determination to abandon their own violation enforcement of a $5,000 fine goes beyond reason, especially since their statement of position on the matter is not publicly available. Is this how our regulators will also handle serious public water system violations? Instead of enforcing, EPA has enabled the Navy by extending deadlines for them. A water storage tank on the basis system hasn't been cleaned in over a decade, and now the EPA has provided an extension to them to clean this water tank by 2030, a whole 17 years later of potential contamination. They also granted the Navy an extension for required water system operator SOPs for next year, March of 2026. There's no good reason for an extension like this for basic SOPs. How can current residents be comfortable knowing their water suppliers don't even have standards of procedure to send them clean water? Turning to the updated groundwater flow modeling report from September of last year, a small amount of fuel escaped the subsurface after May 2021. TPHD was detected in monitoring wells in a timing consistent with groundwater transport that could be tied to the May release. In October of that year, DOH said the significant increase in proximity and detections of TPHD from as early as July indicated a risk to the Red Hill shaft. So to hear earlier in this meeting today that the monitoring wells would detect any migration of contamination once these shafts come back online does not give me confidence. Those wells were alerting us in summer of 2021, and yet no urgent action was taken, and many of us became ill before the blatant November fuel release. It's so counterproductive that these new ground rules allow the parties in charge to not even reply during this community engagement public comment portion. The public is having to go through these reports, check data, show up even from different time zones, and simply want you to acknowledge and attempt to answer our questions. It is quite literally the very least you could do. I'm still appreciative of the continued work being done, but we've got a long way to go to feel safe and clean up the messy physical and relational history of Red Hill. Mahalo.
Okay, I believe we have one more online. Catherine. We're promoting her as speaker. Okay, I see she's on.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm going to go ahead and start since the
Yes.
timer. I just want to speak as to kind of piggyback on what Meredith spoke about tonight. As an affected member of the community, I find it very disturbing that we have to sit in a meeting 3 years after the Navy spent an entire year blowing away any kind of compliance delay reporting deadlines, did not report exceedances in any kind of timely fashion. And it allowed exceedances in even the drinking water to go months past any kind of notification to families. And yet you're asking us to trust you, both EPA, Department of Health, and Navy, that this opening of Red Hill Shaft would actually be providing water that meets compliance, when the Navy did not meet any compliance in 2021, yet felt no pressure, nor does any agency speak about that very thing to this day. So I, again, like Meredith said, we don't get answers. We get to speak our comments and then hope that one day somebody will tell us what exactly happened in 2021 in all of the months that allowed the Navy and AECOM to ignore standard water testing practices, to ignore compliance deadlines, and to ignore the fact that not only were the groundwater monitoring wells coming back with unsafe detected levels of petroleum, but so was the Red Hill drinking shaft. And until that somebody will sit down at the table and speak the whole truth about 2021, I don't know how you would ever convince any one of our families that that water is safe to this day. So I hope in the future you will find the time and the energy and the compassion to sit down with families and the public and fully explain what 2021. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the end of the list online. Now we'll go back to 2 more people that we have in person. So if we can have Sinai, who wanted to talk about the pilot study, had some questions.
Aloha, my name is Sinai Hartman. I'm a bioremediation specialist and a PhD candidate studying remediation pathways for these red hill plumes. And I have a few questions that I hope can be answered in the next meeting. The first, the Navy being, what are the specific sampling methods that are being used on either side of the GAC filters, in addition to the ion exchange models? And are these the same sampling methods that are being used in the 46 monitoring wells? My second set of questions is for the Department of Health. According to the naval timeline for these pilot studies, the final report would be prepared and given to you guys in May 2025, with the expectation of the possibility of receiving a decision on that report, applying for restarting that well, and possibly starting that well again, all in June 2025. So all of that potentially happening in a month. So my question to the Department of Health is, how long will you spend going through that report and deciding whether it's acceptable or unacceptable? And what will your criteria be when you're reviewing those documents? Thank you.
So up next we have Kahele Keo, who wanted to talk about Red Hill Kuleana.
Aloha, my name is Kahele Kao. I belong to the Jamal Kanai family. I'm a proud Kanaka. I find it so uncanny that the Navy has brought us here to the Navy Community Center named Pokulani. They adorn their po'iwi with lei and sit at a table to discuss an issue that was avoidable. Outside of this building is a pool and water feature. However, you desecrate my land, Hawaiian's land, and continue to mock us. The lay on your shoulders was given from the Aina, and why you continue to rape and pillage. The word Hokulani or heavenly star has meaning and significance. You rape my Aina, my mokuahine papahanao moku, then take my language. Do you have no shame? Are you so morally lost that you cannot even comprehend kuleana, a kuleana that became yours when you poisoned ohanas, keikis, kupuna, and food systems? Not only that, when we came today, there were men with guns outside. That is not okay. No one is here to fight or argue. We are supposed to come together as a community to figure this out, which is your fault. It is horrifying to see. When we are at Olelo, it is never like that. We welcome you, but you don't show up. So what does that say about you? Heva, you should be ashamed.
Yeah, that's it.
CRI member, I would take notes on unanswered questions or commitments made by these folks to follow up on some items. I'll circle back with Amy and make sure that we're on the same page about those. Is there anything else? I'm so shocked that we haven't like literally run right up to the top of the hour, so I'm not quite sure how to close this meeting.
Lies that maybe told us. Have to be 3 months, 6 months.
Do you want to
The lies that maybe told us tonight. About leases and addendums. I know not a single resident in Radford Terrace who has that in their lease or addendum. Nobody in my neighborhood knows about Red Hill. Nobody knows about the water crisis. Nobody knows about the Safe Waters website. I attend these meetings. There is nothing sent out from housing telling us about all these community things that you're doing. The app doesn't work. It hasn't worked for months. I just tried to touch it again. It still doesn't work. So everything on this beautiful little thing is false because things don't work. Things you're telling us are not working. And I'm trying to understand why. And I'm trying to take what you're saying with all the truths and justice that you signed up for. But I didn't sign up for this. So please work on your community engagement, work on communicating better, tell housing to do their jobs and to stop poisoning us. If you're actually caring about us, they're still getting my full husband's age. So it's still your kuleana, your responsibility to ensure that we are safe. Because while my husband's serving across seas, we need to make sure that he is safe and ready to follow SECDEF's order on lethality. How does that make him the most lethal force in the world? He's worried about his sick family at home and about his sick son getting kidney disease at the age of 12. How is that making a lethal force? I still can't answer that question. Please, Rear Admiral, 1-star general, how does this make us the most lethal force in the world to follow SECDEF's command if our children and families and active duty members are sick?
Thank you, Mai. When will the questions that are submitted for April be responded to? I do appreciate part of your question was, will we have to wait 3 months to hear responses to some of these things? When will April questions receive responses, Amy?
So from EPA, I think we try to do question responses within 2 weeks. Some do take a little bit longer because we have to consult with subject matter experts. But Karen will provide you an update if we're going to take longer than 2 weeks.
And from the Navy?
So I think the same process, if I remember, the process agreed to come in, clearinghouse will determine in scope, out of scope. Staff out an answer.
Yep.
Or if that answer is saying this is available at this location. And then that's all going to be fed back through. And you should get a single or comment site picture back.
So we owe you a point of contact from each of the agencies. So I'm just reading from the ground rules. The EPA, Navy, and DLA will each identify a central point of contact for receipt of elected CRI members and community questions. Upon receipt, each entity has 1 month to respond. If questions overlap, EPA, DLA may group responses to similar related questions.
So when will you identify a point of contact?
I'm not done yet. I just have a couple more points. It says EPA, Navy, and DLA will not be required to answer questions outside of the scope of the ACO in this forum. Where appropriate, questions outside of the scope of the ACO will be directed to the appropriate resources, and questions that pertain to matters in litigation will not be answered. EPA's point of contact is Karen Davis. So just so you know.
Is Navy able to identify? Your
So
point
this
of
is where Jamie's on, right? I thought we had settled on, we're gonna have a single entry point.
Okay.
I think that's into Karen, and then we're gonna disperse the questions thereout.
Thank you so much. And Kathy, I heard a few questions that are for DOH, and I assume you can commit to helping respond in the same timeframe.
Sure. Yeah. So we were looking at these questions. Are these the questions or the questions that are asked at the meeting?
I heard a couple things come up earlier in the meeting, like being able to be precise about some responses provided, et cetera.
If it's the ones that are in this meeting, yes, we should.
We stopped writing the questions because the Navy stopped attending. And I believe they used to attend every month, right, when CRI started. So why are they not attending every month?
Because we signed these ground rules that allow them to make us be nice to them. The Navy indicates that they have a monthly event other places on the island. So is there a reason why the Navy's not available to meet with the CRI monthly?
So we committed as part of the ACO amendment to meet quarterly. We have many others. This is one of many public engagement events that we do. It is not the only way we engage with the community. And so again, we've committed to participate monthly, and we will do so.
So is there some sort of listing with the numbers of individuals that are attending your public engagement events? Do we know who's attending and how many people are in attendance? I mean, just to see if it's.
So we have,
it's
on our website, we have a list of all the engagements that are available, all upcoming, that you can.
Are you getting a lot of community engagement, a lot of members from the community attending these events?
Our open houses are.
Yeah.
About 40 for the open.
Can we get that information also publicly?
I do have one request. I noticed on their list of events that you are reporting out as being community events, that you list the CRI meeting, even the ones that you do not attend. And I feel like that's misleading.
Yes.
I would prefer that you either make clear that you did not attend or don't mention them at all.
All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much for your effort and participation. It's been a joy to see your face at the end.